All right, what's up, everybody? It's the talented Mr. Taco back with another video. I got the fantasy football hustler on today. What's up, hustler?
What up? What up? Ready to come talk some shit about this draft and some football. And thanks for having me on, bro.
No problem. Now, fantasy football hustler is one of my favorite people in this industry. He's really down to earth. He loves to help people. You know, he has a great big group on Facebook where there's a lot of talk going on between news, dynasty, IDP, super flex. There's so many different types of leagues, and I'm just glad that I'm able to have him on today just to give you guys a little bit of perspective on what's coming on for this draft and some players that you might be looking for, because as we know, a lot of people like to draft way too early. And I know you're one of them, right?
Oh, yeah. Especially for Dynasty. This is like Dynasty draft season, right now. And you're drafting so many players. I mean, the waiver wire is super thin. So everyone's getting drafted in a Dynasty league. When it comes to redraft, got to be an August draft, for me. Too much shit can change, for a one season league.
Yep, and I agree. And as most of our viewers know, we mostly rock with that redraft 1 QB, standard PPR settings. But one thing I like about Hustler is he's been pushing an IDP movement to get those individual defensive players into the game. And, I really support that. And even though I'm a redraft guy, I don't really play that much IDP. I did want to get him on here so he can spread the gospel of the IDP and get these defensive players in it. So I think off the bat, that leads me to my first question about this draft. And Hustler, who's the most interesting defensive player that's coming out of this draft? I hear a lot of things about Parsons coming out of Penn State, but who do you really like the most out of this draft?
I like Parsons, kind of someone for me who I think been a little bit underrated, but Chaz Surratt. That's someone I want to throw on the radar. I mean, went to North Carolina, so not a big time school as far as people looking for the talent there. Dude was a quarterback as a freshman in college, completely got switched, and now he's one of the best linebackers in the country. And I had Bob Van, the IDP man, on, and he's one of his favorites also. Before he came on, I listened to a bunch of podcasts, and there was a podcast where Lovie Smith, or not Lovie Smith, the coach for the Bengals. I don't know why I'm the ex-coach.
Oh, okay, Marvin Williams, Marvin Lewis, whatever.
Marvin Lewis, there we go. Thanks. He and Randy Moss they put together how they don't have the combine, but they got all these pro camps or whatever the hell you want to call it. And him and Randy Moss were doing one, and the person that he brought up was Chaz Surratt. Said that he is the smartest player that he has ever seen at that level, and just crazy because he was a quarterback, so we know he's got the smarts, and then switched over, kind of carried that with him. So he's someone I want to throw on the radar. Asante Samuel Jr. That's someone we got to throw on the radar. Probably a little bit better for NFL as opposed to fantasy football. But Richie Grant for fantasy football, well, real football and fantasy football, but he's someone I'm really excited to see where he lands, because I feel like he could be someone very similar to Jeremy Chin last year, where if he goes into the right spot, he could be week 1 starter, week 2 starter. He's just got to get into the right system that needs him to get in right away.
Interesting. And you're bringing up a lot of people that I'm pretty sure that most viewers haven't really, known too much about it or heard too much about it, because I know for a fact that Chaz is not someone that I've heard about, and I'm already learning on this podcast, and this is exactly what I wanted. So I think that the next question I would have for you about that is, how many rookie defensive players come in and actually make a difference in an IDP settings? Like, do you mainly look at rookies as guys that if you're in a dynasty league and you do IDP, that maybe you want to get one and stash one? And, if you're in a redraft league, you kind of want to focus on your normal, typical guys that are like the corners of your defense.
So when it comes to redraft, so a little history on me. The first league that I ever played in, 2006, it was 2 QB plus IDP. So for me, for fantasy football, having no defense or having team defense was like a foreign concept until I got more immersed in social media and things like that. So it really depends on your roster setup. Like if you're playing with, I would say, if you're playing with 4 IDP spots or less, probably not, and you're in redraft, I wouldn't even be worrying about rookies. If you're playing in a league with 5 spots or more and you can start multiple linebackers, like guys last year, like Patrick Queen, he was someone that if you could play multiple linebackers and he was, your second or third linebacker that you had in your lineup, you were stoked because he didn't get too much playing time right in the beginning, but he was on the field. And towards the end of the season, he was 80 to 90% snaps. So just like wide receivers, rookie wide receivers, a lot of times in the first couple weeks they're a little iffy, but if they catch some fire, those are guys who make a difference on making championship runs.
And I think that's a perfect segue, because I think rookie wide receivers are one of those positions that everyone gets excited for in fantasy football because there's always some new fantasy toy, as they say, that's coming out, new hot rod, new hot wheel that everyone wants to get on their team. And I think this draft has a lot of dynamic playmakers in it, from Kyle Pitts to Jamar Chase to Devontae Smith. You got Waddle, and there's a bunch of other guys that are lesser known that are kind of making their way up. So I guess to me, I would say, other than the big names, your Waddle, your Smith, who's your first playmaker that you like other than the top guys?
I really like Rondale Moore. I cannot tell you how much I like him because you just look at his tape. He's 5'9", he's more of he's that scat back, type thing where he's going to get used as wide receiver, but they could throw him, in different plays where he's making catches out of the backfield. But the thing that I like about him the most, first off, when we talk about gym rats, we're usually talking about white guys. So I want to take that kind of thing out of there. This dude squats 600 pounds. Squats 600 pounds. When he goes over the middle, he's looking for contact. And obviously in the NFL, you better not be looking for contact against some of these beastly middle linebackers. But I love that he tries to create the contact, really force just that aggression and his will on people. And I feel like he's going to make some DBs look stupid in this upcoming year. He's got to land in the right spot though. For these guys outside of the top couple, they really need to land in the right spot.
Where would you like to see a guy like that go? And where do you think he's going to go?
So he's probably I don't think he's going to go in the first round. He's probably going to be kind of where DK Metcalf and then we're going later in the second round. I honestly haven't been looking at the second round, later second round, picks who's in there, but I honestly think he's going to be going somewhere in the second half of the second round.
So he's the kind of guy that you can see the Chiefs just kind of being hey, we have 2 second-round picks. We got all the offensive linemen in the world now that we've made some moves. Let's get another playmaker that can go deep.
Bro, you just hyped me the fuck up. If he goes to the Chiefs, whoa, he's taking their offense to the next level because he is the exact type of guy that Andy Reid knows how to use.
Because the way you make it sound, and especially because the Chiefs just did that deal with the Ravens where basically they gave up their first-round pick. They have 2 second-round picks that'll be in the back half of the draft. It just makes sense based on what you're saying with what they did because you already stacked up the offensive line. Your defense is pretty solid, but let's face it, that team is built on its offense, and if you can get a dynamic playmaker like that to Mahomes, I think not only could it be fun for real life, but for fantasy, he might be that guy that we thought McCole Hardman could have been because Lord knows everyone thought McCole Hardman was going to blow up last year.
Yeah, and one of those I see him more as a slot guy, but if it's him and Travis Kelce and they're literally lining up, if they were lining up next to each other, off center or whatever, that would be fucking wild. And if they were on opposite sides of the field and you have 2 playmakers that you literally can't cover and then you throw in Tyreek Hill also, that's wild, man. That is wild. Do you know offhand what picks the Chiefs have?
I do not know which picks they have, but I know that they have their pick, so it should probably be the second to last pick in the second round, and they have the Ravens pick. So the Ravens pick should probably be maybe 10 picks before the last or a little bit less because the Ravens
58 and 63.
Yep.
If he's there at 58, I definitely could see them making a move for someone like him because it's usually a lot of these wide receivers that are going in the second round, and it's these wide receivers in the second round who they don't have the expectations, those first round guys. They usually aren't expected to be the guy like Justin Jefferson last year.
Exactly
Perfect example. Second round guy who wasn't expected to be the man on the team. You got Thielen. You can just let him do his thing. And once Kirk Cousins realized how dominant he was, Kirk Cousins said he was stupid for not getting Justin Jefferson the ball more in the first 3 games of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think the craziest thing about that is Justin Jefferson was such a revelation to so many fantasy owners when you saw what he was doing in the big plays he made. But he was the number 2 wide receiver on his team when he was in college to the guy who's coming out this year in Chase. And I think the question I have for you now is, who do you think is the top playmaker in this draft? Who do you have as your number 1 guy that you think is going to be most impactful?
So it's tough between those top 3 guys, honestly, but I really feel like year 1, it's not going to be one of those guys who's the number 1 wide receiver, at least for year 1. But I do feel like Smith, Chase, Waddle, like those guys, they're just a different type of breed. And, a little bit smaller, compared to a lot of these stereotypical 6'4", 6'5", first rounders that usually go. I like all 3 of those, and it's so tough for me to choose. I think that Chase is not going to be that dude right away because there's so much hype on him right now. Every team knows that he's going to be like that dude that you're going to want to lock down. So if Chase does not go to a place where they have a legit number 1 wide receiver, I don't think in a redraft league that he is going to live up to the hype that you want him to live up to.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think the one thing that Chase has going for him, though, is that it's a really interesting dynamic at the top of the draft. We could see some teams making some deals. We can see some teams, him sliding to, because I think the Bengals are interesting. They have some weapons to protect him, like you said, because you have Higgins, you have Boyd. But I don't know if their offensive line holds up enough for him to be, anything special. And I think that probably one of the next places he could fall would be the Panthers, who I think, have an opportunity, but they have some weapons, like you said. But the question is, what do they do? I think that they could be a team that trades back or they get a quarterback. So I think this first round becomes really interesting. And the question I have for you then is, I know that, what is it, Pitts? Pitts has been being regarded as almost as good as these wide receivers. And do you see him as being one of those tight ends that could, because I know every year or every other year, there's the tight end that's going to break the mold. And there's that next Vernon Davis. There's that next Evan Ingram. But what do you really see out of Pitts coming into this season, especially if he ends up in one of the teams like the Dolphins, which they're projecting him at?
So with Pitts, landing spot is going to be huge. He's going to be a top 10 pick. Like if he makes it outside of the top 10, he must have done something, that we just really don't know about behind the scenes. But we're talking about him being pretty much the best prospect ever to come out, at tight end. And like the last, best prospect ever was Eric Ebron. Leaps and bounds, just better skill set than a guy like Eric Ebron. Because with Pitts, it's not just about the cone drills. It's not just about the 40. Like his wingspan is just ridiculous. Like the type of routes that he runs is ridiculous. Like he doesn't have a route tree that a normal tight end in college has. Like I feel like that's where his big difference is. I know that you already know, and you're probably setting me up for it, but I really think that he's going to go to the San Francisco 49ers. Like, it's going to surprise some people. It is going to. But I think that San Francisco, like last year, obviously it was all those injuries and everything. The year before, we're talking about one pass away, like, fingertips, away from Emmanuel Sanders, maybe they win that Super Bowl. I feel like Jimmy G is going to be the starter for one more year, and I don't think that they get a QB with number 3. It doesn't mean that they can't get another quarterback some other way or trade Jimmy G next year for somebody or anything. Like there's so few homegrown QBs that actually last in the NFL. Most of them fail, when we think about it. So if we're talking about I'm trading up in the draft to pick a player that I think is 1,000,000% bust proof. If I can't get Trevor Lawrence, I think Kyle Pitts is that next dude.
And I know that a lot of people, at least on their big boards, have Pitts up there right where you're saying, like, he is, like you said, a generational player. I've heard people compare him to like the Calvin Johnson at tight end. Just because, like you said, his wingspan, his speed, his size, just everything he presents to an NFL offense. But I do think that when we heard what Shanahan said today, and this is what, like you said, I was going to eventually bring it up. You're the only one I know that's standing on his stance of no QB by the 49ers. But we did hear Shanahan say today that when they made that trade, there was 5 QBs that they like. So if you like 5 QBs there, you're going to take one. And I think then this sets up for the best position of, okay, so let's just say they do take a QB. Okay, 49ers taking a QB. The rumors are saying they're between Fields and Mac, and that Shanahan likes Mac, but the front office likes Lance, and that he would defer to the front office. Do you think it's a mistake that they're not looking at Fields in that position? Or who do you think is the proper guy for them to be looking at 3?
So I like Fields, but I know we can't use we shouldn't use it that much, but these Ohio State quarterbacks never translate to the NFL. Like not one, that's something that even though it shouldn't make a difference, it's in my head. And if it's in my head as a normal fucking person, how can it not be in anybody in the front office's head or just like a thought? So it's one of those things to where Fields, he's very hyped. He should be a top 3 pick. I've been telling everybody for months, Mac Jones is getting so much hype by a small group of people on social media. And I always felt that Mac Jones was going to go a lot higher than people thought. I don't know why everybody's hyping him up. He's Alabama. He is pro ready, but kind of like a system quarterback, and if he doesn't get into the right system, he's probably going to fail. And like Tua coming out last year, not looking that good. If I'm thinking about Tua not being that good and being, Alabama quarterback, like other people have to also, but I feel like they could take Mac Jones. He's been getting a crazy amount of hype, ever since I want to say like right after the Super Bowl, in February. And I've been talking about it and I kind of stopped talking about it. But this week I'm going to bring that up, how there is so much hype around him from a very small group of people that think that he's the next guy after Trevor Lawrence.
And then I think the one thing that I can say about Mac is because I was watching the Rum Boys After Dark the other night when you were on, and you guys were talking about the quarterbacks, and someone had mentioned good quarterbacks aren't going to fly 10, and Mac Jones really, is he even a top 10 quarterback? A lot of people have second round grades on him, while other people, like you said, think the world of him because of him being in that pro style ready offense, him being someone that could really manage in a system. And I think when you're looking at the 49ers, I think they kind of give you the opportunity for both, because they are a great system with a guy like Shanahan who could really take a guy like Kirk Cousins and make him look great and get Kirk Cousins $30 million. And if he's looking at a guy like Mac Jones and he's like, wow, shit, I know he's not the fastest. I know he doesn't have the best arm, but he could do what I need him to do. And I think that becomes the interesting point or perspective to me is if Mac Jones can do what that coach needs him to do, which is why if, let's just say, Jones is the guy that falls, I think that him and Gruden or him and Belichick could be an interesting combination, because Mac Jones is very cerebral. Mac Jones can understand what's going on. He's played in pressure games. He grew up in the pressure zone. And I think that, yes, he's not going to be the best quarterback, but he could be a lot better than what a lot of these players are or these quarterbacks are right now. So I do think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Mac Jones. And I'll be interested to hear, your thoughts on him as we get closer to the week and how you break him down. But I think Mac Jones.
One last thing before we switch to the next thing with Shanahan, we talked about Kirk Cousins. I mean, they drafted him in the 7th round. Okay. They also drafted RG3 in the 1st round that year. Now, if I made that move, are you telling me that I wouldn't be thinking about those type of things, knowing that I could bet the farm on someone and he could fail and not be as good as my 7th round pick? So it's all about trusting that evaluation, and they know how to value quarterbacks. And I don't think that just because everybody in the world thinks that they're going to draft a QB, that's what's going to happen.
Buck the trends. I'm all about that in betting. So I like that. So now I have a lot of Jets fans that watch my stuff because I'm in New York. So, and I think that the Jets shut it down early. I knew that Fields had his 2nd pro day. I didn't hear anyone from the Jets showed up. They've been locked in on Zach Wilson. They've already gotten rid of Sam Darnold. So we know that Wilson, not only is he going to be the pick, but more than likely he's going to be the starter week 1 for the Jets. What do you expect out of Zach Wilson? Do you think that he has any potential to be fantasy relevant in his first season with the Jets? And what do you think about him as a prospect overall?
So I like him as a prospect. I mean, it's tough to like comp anybody to like Patrick Mahomes, you know, because it's just ridiculous. But like the things that I like about him is like his unconventional throws. Like, so, you know, he's not just a pocket passer, you know, like he can be a pocket passer, but because he was playing at BYU and the line wasn't really that great, you don't have the best receivers, things like that. He had to do a lot of the things on his own. So, I mean, I guess that's one good thing, you know, for the Jets, like him scrambling, you know, like those type of things, running for his life, you know, he's already used to that. So the Jets not having the best line, at least he makes the most sense for that spot. The Jets better do something smart and draft like an O lineman at 23. Shit, do an O lineman with your second pick. You know, 2, you already got these wide receivers. Like, I know running back is the sexy pick, and it's probably going to be a really good running back at 23. They better do the smart thing and build some O-line pieces around him.
I definitely agree with you. And I think that I love hearing that you comp him to Mahomes, because I knew a few of my buddies been making that comp, and they love it because, you know, they're all excited. But you know, at the same point in time, I've heard a lot of people comp him to Sam Darnold. So, you know, you never know what you might get. You might get a smaller version of Sam. That's what some people have said. So I think it'll be interesting to see. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. At 23, they better be looking at offensive line or figuring a way to move up and get another offensive lineman, because they did hit with Becton last year. You know, he was one of the last or second to last offensive lineman drafted, but he might have performed as one of the top 2 last year. He's a big boy, and you know, they look like they hit there. So they need to get some other pieces to help him out and to help their quarterback out, because Sam Darnold definitely got the short end of the stick. I think that Sam Darnold, actually, I think this is a good time to bring it up. I think Sam Darnold, if he gets the opportunity to start for the Panthers, could be an interesting play, because he's not as bad as I feel like people have made him out to be. Because in New York, we've seen flashes of him where he can get those big runs down the field like he did with the Broncos. He can make some good throws down the field that wow you, but he didn't have wide receivers. They got rid of Robbie Anderson on him, and you saw his numbers dip. And the other thing is, he had to run for his life. Like you said, you don't have an offensive line with the Jets. So real quick, what's your perspective on Sam Darnold coming up on the season?
So I don't love Sam Darnold. I don't hate him. He's kind of one of those guys who are in the middle to me. I feel like, so a really good comp to the way that their careers have kind of gone is like Blake Bortles, you know, someone who was drafted in like top 3, who really wasn't given anything. You weren't given a line, you know, you weren't given, you know, pieces to come in on the offense. And yeah, Sam Darnold just got a bad shake of it. And so I feel like getting over to a better system is going to do him some good. Like, I remember that game when Sam Darnold beat the shit out of the Cowboys, you know, when caught everybody by surprise. And like, so we see that he can step up, you know, given the motivation. It's just one of those things. How motivated are you to play on the Jets? And
and you have Adam Gase as the coach. Adam Gase as the coach doesn't help you at all, bro. Like,
nope.
So I think that's why Sam Darnold might be one of the sneaky plays during the season, because Moore and Anderson are 2 beasts, and then you still got McCaffrey. So they have some weapons, and you know, we'll see what they do at 8, because they can go a quarterback, they can go a wide receiver, or they can trade down. So I think the Panthers are going to be a very interesting team to watch in that top 10. I think they're one of those teams that, you know, more than likely is going to trade down if they had their chance, I feel like, because you already made the trade for Sam. Unless you're in love with a quarterback, you're probably just going to get more assets, because, like you said, there's a lot of wide receivers that have good grades later on in this draft. Everyone's saying it's a deep wide receiver draft. So I think that'll be very interesting. And speaking of QB prospects, I think you said he is the number 1 in your eyes. So tell me a little bit about Trevor Lawrence and why everyone should be excited to see Trevor Lawrence in the NFL finally.
So I'm excited, but I'm also pumping the brakes a little bit. But because of the Jaguars, like that's why is because of the Jaguars. But we're talking about the prototypical, you know, type quarterback. Like he's like 6'6", he's like 220. He's got a nice arm. He can run when he needs to. Like little bit, just kind of does everything good. And Yeah, he's one of the better QB prospects to come out in a long time.
Mhm.
I just always pump the brakes a little bit on some of these rookie QBs. Like, I mean, you have to go back to a guy I feel like Andrew Luck, to where he just ended up in the perfect position. You know, like the Colts just had a bad one
Mhm.
year, and then he just, lucked into a really great system. Jaguars aren't that great of a system. Jaguars don't have the best offensive linemen.
But we did see recently, you're on a recency bias. We saw Justin Herbert last year with those Chargers. Really, just like I think he shocked everyone because he wasn't that great, but he came in and he just blew up. And for the Jaguars, I know they're just the Jaguars, and I'm gonna let you finish out after this, but they did add Urban Meyer. So does that help to your confidence level, if anything? Because Urban Meyer, like he said, he wants to draft speed. And yeah, you get some good speed with this team, and he puts up his schemes. I think it might not be the same old Jags like with the Knicks getting Tom Thibodeau. A coach can change everything.
It definitely bumps them up, for sure. Like the Jaguars, they're always one of those teams that we knew weren't going to amount to anything, but you had a couple good fantasy relevant players. It's going to be about them getting weapons, because I feel like if Herbert did not have Keenan Allen, Herbert wouldn't be what he is. I'm not saying Herbert's not good, because he really is. But when you got a guy like Keenan Allen, you can get these random guys to stretch the field. And Herbert just went down the field with so much confidence that if I see Trevor Lawrence come in week 1, because that's when I saw Herbert and I saw how much confidence he had, literally his first drive in the NFL. I was like, this kid is special, because rookies don't go down the field with confidence like that, and accuracy and deep. Like, it just doesn't happen that often. So Herbert passed the eye test for me 5 minutes into that game when I saw him, and I knew that he was going to be the shit. And I knew that he could overcome the bad Chargers front office, because I live in San Diego. I was a Chargers fan until they left for LA, and then I'm a free agent now. But the front office ruins quarterbacks. Like Phillip Rivers, the only reason he didn't get ruined is because he was just like this Iron Man that can just take that many hits. But now with this new coaching regime, hopefully they do something for Herbert to help him out, because Rivers was honestly never helped in his entire career.
Yep, I totally agree with you, and I think it'll be really interesting to see what they do, because like you said, once you saw Herbert really come out there and start playing, he looked like he belonged. And not only did he belong, but he was like an elite belong. Like, you look at this dude and you're saying, whoa, who's that? So he's not just a guy, he's looking like a guy, like one of the guys. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see. And I do very much agree with what you said. Having a guy like Keenan Allen off the bat helps him out so much. And I think that's the one thing that we didn't see with guys like Sam Darnold. They didn't have the weapons in order to be successful, and they really need to get Lawrence some weapons. If he's going to be the pick and you're going to build around him, make sure you get him some guys that can make some plays, because you know what? A quarterback is only as good as the guy that's catching it sometimes.
And really, you just need one alpha, because, I mean, let's not forget when Blake Bortles had Allen Robinson that one year. I swear Blake Bortles made the fucking Pro Bowl. Like they made it to like the championship game, and like a lot of that was due to one man. It was Allen Robinson literally changing the game because he was unguardable.
And I think that's one reason why I'm a little excited for the Giants this season, and excited for Danny Dimes, big year 3, is because of, like you said, one man can really make the difference. And so far, the Giants are going to get 2 men that are going to make a huge difference. One, and Kenny Galladay, who makes a lot of good contested catches. So I think around the goal line and, getting those first yards in those tough situations, I think that's going to open it up for Danny Dimes. I think getting a guy like Saquon Barkley back is going to help him. And I think that's a little understated on how much the Giants really lean on that running game and how dynamic he could be. But if they end up drafting a guy like Smith too, or one of the wide receivers that they're rumored to get at 11, I think that he's one of those guys that could take a big step 3. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the Giants do with that pick, because I think if they take either an offensive lineman or a wide receiver, it sets up Danny Dimes to be one of those make or break year 3 type sleeper quarterbacks. So personally, I'm very excited about that, and it just rings true to a lot what you're saying. Those wide receivers make these quarterbacks.
Yep, and I got Kenny Golladay on a couple teams doing the drafts early, so it was before he actually switched. And now that Jared Goff switched to the Lions, I like Golladay going to the Giants more than him being on the Lions. And yeah, it's gonna be about I don't call him Danny Dimes. I'll let you do that, but it's all about if Daniel Jones can throw a good jump ball, for him, maybe some magic can start happening.
Now, I think we'll end it with probably the position that has been the most disrespected in the draft, and I think that's running backs. These guys are, for years, the dudes that carry teams to championships, that win Super Bowls, that win games, that get down and dirty and really take your team far. But in the draft, let's face it, they go down, first round, end of first round, beginning second round, third round. That's where you really get your running backs. And the first question I have is about the guy that we saw from Alabama that I think a lot of people know about. That's Najee Harris. Like, where do you see Najee going, and what kind of upside do you see out of that kid? Because he looked dynamic when we saw him on playing on Sundays or Saturdays, I should say.
So one thing that's crazy, I mean, us just being football fans and fantasy fans, like, it's all about that running back, they are so important. But one thing that's a little bit crazy is when you start dipping into like the dynasty world. And if you actually play with like IDP, and you have like 17 to 20 starters, on your team, the running backs start getting a lot less valuable. And I swear, like, it is just like they don't last that long. And so nobody wants to put a bunch of capital into a player that on average will be with my team for, 3 years, if that. And that's the tough part. A guy like Najee, he should be going in the first round. I mean, we hear all this hype like about him going to the Steelers or something. And like, I don't even know why the hell people think that he's going to go to the Steelers. They have a garbage line. The Steelers have not drafted a first-round running back since Rashard Mendenhall, and that even though he was good, it didn't work out the way that they wanted because he left before, left before he should have. And so these teams don't give a fuck about running backs. Like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the only guy who went in the first round, and it's because Patrick Mahomes said, "Get me this dude." I almost don't think that any of these guys are going to go in the first round like that. That's where I'm thinking is like, and Najee, even though he's like that prototypical, like beast of a running back, like 6'2", 230. I got it pulled up here so I could be ready, but he's 23 years old. And like, as crazy as, that is, when these running backs hit 25, 26 years old, it's like they're dead to the NFL. Like, that's just, it's just crazy. So yeah, as much as a fantasy guy, I get behind these running backs, I'm almost of the mindset that none of them go in the first round, but a lot, like 5, probably go in the second round, or at least those top 3 to 4.
Now that's an interesting take. I think that's my favorite take so far is, guys like Najee, who I think, like you said, should be in the first round, has a first round grade. There's rumors about him to teams like the Steelers. The Jets desperately could use a running back at the end of that first round, but he could definitely fall to round 2. And imagine that you get a team like the Jaguars that get him. And now you're playing Lawrence and Najee, and you give him a good backup to start off with, and you get him in the second round at that. Like, that's a talented back to put back there. But then that really kills James Robinson season, man. Twitter's just going to go crazy.
Well, but that's what we think. But why isn't Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt's value, gone down? Like, if you have the right 1-2 punch and they're being used the right way, like, look at last year, McKissick and Gibson. Like, there were some weeks where both of those guys were top 12 running backs. So it's really just about the system. But the way that the NFL is going right now, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Zeke, Dalvin Cook. Who else is a back who gets like 95+%, of their snaps? Like, nobody.
Yep. Kamara sometimes, but that's kind of hit or miss because a lot of times they would give him from Ingram to Murray. They would always give him some sort of guy to split time with. And, Zeke, he worries me, but that's a whole nother discussion. But Ffhustler, I appreciate you having you on today. Definitely a good deep dive, especially into some of these guys that are going to be fantasy relevant. Got to talk a little IDP here. Before we let you go, I guess, give your little IDP shtick, because I know you're trying to make it a big thing into the season. I want to give you that platform to talk about it and tell the people where they can find you.
So you can find me, Fantasy Football Hustler, on YouTube, all the podcasts. It's at Ffhustler 420 on all social media. The reason why we got to get IDP into the mix here is because defensive players usually make more plays, like if we're talking just one-on-one player, than all of these offensive players do. Like the top defensive players are way more involved in the NFL game than a lot of these top wide receivers are. And it's just one of those things that it doesn't have to be hard. It's as hard as your commissioner makes it. So sorry if you have a dumbass commissioner who's like not trying to make it easy for guys to dip their toe in the water. But I would say if you want to just start it off very easy, you want to convert a league from offense to IDP, start very small. Start with like 2 IDP flexes. Start with 3 IDP flexes. You will every single team will be stacked at defense, and it will be fun because now you get to actually cheer for these couple players, and then you're going to want to expand the next year because you're going to want to cheer for more of these players. And for people who don't watch football, because I know there's some fantasy players who literally watch like one football game a week. How do you scout your wide receivers and your running backs? You just go to the waiver wire and you go look and see who's available, and you look at all the points, and literally the same thing, except you look at a linebacker, a defensive lineman, or you just have them by all positions, and then you see maybe a linebacker was the highest scoring, free agent, from the week before. So it's not hard. It's very simple, very, very simple. There's more content that's coming out around it. I'm going to be dropping more content as always. Handful of people on Twitter are going to be creating more digestible IDP content, not just crazy analytical stuff for like all these nerds, but just breaking it down to where normal people who may be casual mainstream fans, maybe you don't watch much football, but you love fantasy football. Like, we're going to break it down to where it's super easy. You'll know who to pick up on a week-to-week basis, and you'll love it. Everybody who gets into an IDP with anybody who gets into an IDP league with me says they will not go back.
And I think, though, the one thing I want to let you leave off on that is you had broke down the scoring system that you were doing that I thought was really interesting, and you kept it really simple with your 1, 2, 3 scoring. So if you could just give them a little idea of how scoring breaks down for that before we wrap it up. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, let me pull it up here. So yeah, it's IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring. So it's about making everything just super simple. No half points for this or that, just everything simple. So QB hit, assisted tackle, 1 point. Solo tackle, tackle for loss, 2 points. Forced fumble, fumble recovery, passes defended, safety, blocked kick, 3 points. Now, out of those 3-point plays, forced fumbles do not happen that much. Okay, so it's not like a stat that you're like, damn, like how do I account who's going to have more forced fumbles? It doesn't happen like that. It's like accounting for a guy getting a 40-yard, touchdown. Like, you just don't account for things like that. It's icing on the cake. But passes defended, that is very important. Like corners and safeties, they're getting passes defended all the time. It's, just as good as a tackle, if not better. And then sack, interception, and defensive touchdown, 6 points. So those are like huge game-changing plays that should equal as much as a running back getting a 1-yard touchdown,
I definitely agree with you. I love the whole IDP focus. It's something, that I'm going to bring you on in future episodes as we get ready for the season to help get everyone going. I'm going to try to maybe introduce it into my league. I know I commish one. I might spice it up and just add one player in there to get it going and see where we go with it. But, as always, this is the Daily Sporting. He's the Fantasy Football Hustler. I'm the talented Mr. Taco. We are out, and hope you guys have a wonderful day and enjoy the draft. Peace.
Hey, David and Taco, they bring that heat. All about UFC, way more than a fantasy. Let's see who going toe to toe. Throw down on the mat, check the replay, run it back. We gotta check the stats. Hey, do this every day. We ain't come to play. This is sports talk, and we love talking MMA. Everything fantasy sports. Dopest show that I know. With Electric Dave and talented Mr. Taco. Let's go. Hey, G.